So look, I think my background is I work in health. I worked in the public health sector for a number of years, and that drove me crazy, and so I've stepped out of that now and in the private end of things. I'm part of the larger Pinnacle Group, which is it's the second largest kind of primary care network in New Zealand, but we've got a whole set of companies that do a whole range of things. And I think someone in the group heard one of my interviews and one of the spin-offs about some of the stuff we're doing with pharmacogenomics, and I was asked to just come along and talk a little bit about the health sector. I kind of thought that was good because I come along to the pitch nights, and there's a lot of ag kind of pitching, and there's a lot of tech pitching, but there's not a lot of health stuff. There's a few things that are kind of crept in. And I think, we will probably start to see a lot more stuff coming through as the health sector starts to go under some big changes. So I'll just walk you through some thoughts I've kind of got on that. Maybe we won't go back to Alan. So look, health's all about people, not cows. So if you're in ag research or looking for that kind of angle, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I guess I want to talk about a couple of things just to start off with. The health sector is going through some big changes. Traditionally, the health sector sat over here on the left. New Zealand, we've got largely a publicly funded health sector, and it's been largely about hospitals or clinical networks and providers. So, as consumers, our experience of the health sector is often how we get pushed around provider networks. So, we go to a GP, we get referred to a hospital, we get sent in for some diagnostics, etc., etc. It's very much about a journey between providers. What's been happening over the last decade or two is people have been trying to speed up the health sector. So speed up your journey through someone else's system. So how can we refer you quicker? How can we get treatment quicker? How can we get you home quicker? How can we get your meds kind of quicker? So once again, it's not really about you as a patient. It's really often about how efficient can the provider networks become. But what we're starting to see globally is a real shift away from that to a real consumer-centric kind of model starting to emerge. As data becomes more available and as information has become more available, as consumers, we're starting to make choices outside of the traditional sources that we would go to. So Dr. Google's now the #1 health provider in the globe. Whether it's right or wrong, that's another question. But what that is starting to see is some real trends starting to occur. So on the right, we're starting to see these smarter kind of health systems that are emerging, which are more proactive. They're not as prone to waiting for you to develop an illness. They're starting to have conversations about how do we maintain wellness and how do we step back from being the ambulance or being the hospital down the road, dealing with stuff after it's too late. And with that, there's a whole lot more transparency that's coming into the health sector. So at the moment, as New Zealanders, we're all kind of taught to be grateful for the hospital down the road that's been arranged by bureaucrats and the government, rather than questioning around the efficiency of that. And I think that's really starting to change. Many of us are starting to expect services to be coordinated in a different way. So rather than being forced to go to a GP clinic at 3 in the afternoon because that's convenient for the provider, perhaps it would be more convenient for us to be able to access something online, do it remotely, or use some other form of technology to access that service. And it's those kind of conversations that need to be occurring. So look, there's a number of things that are really contributing to that. Obviously, technology is changing, and that's seeing a real blurring of the ways that we can do things coming together. We're seeing a lot of wearables, not just lifestyle wearables, but wearables that can help you manage disease quite differently. We've got these fire hoses of data that we can pull from people in 2 or 3 minute bursts to help manage and monitor what's going on. And so, in the past, people with like type 1 diabetes, having children with type 1 diabetes, and the drama and the stress of trying to maintain people within a healthy range was not very scientific. There was a lot of risk involved and a lot of gambling. We've now got parents that can monitor their kids or other family members remotely using their phones and intervening earlier based on AI-driven trends that are kind of coming through there. We've also got our friend Elon Musk, who's starting to push the whole neuron. How do we kind of enhance the human brain with a bit of AI on the back of that? And he's been quite public about that recently. Where that goes, who knows? So as I said, we've got a lot of wearables. We've got these kind of great little things for those anxious parents who, you know, can't leave the babies alone. We've seen the cameras, we've seen the baby monitors, we've now got the little booties that will monitor, you know, a whole lot of other biometrics to make, you know, so you can rest easy when out for dinner that baby's still alive. And a favourite of mine is we've got these slimming kind of clothes, I'm still waiting for mine to turn up, that will monitor a whole lot of your biometrics as you move around, from respiratory rates through to moisture levels through to, you know, other kind of more standard measures, and we can use those to intervene and make different kind of decisions about activity. And the last, as my daughter calls, the orgasm pants. So the assisted clothing technology that's coming through, which, you know, is moving away from a lot of the large mechanical kind of assistant technology that's helped people that have got physical ailments, to starting to use clothing which has got circuitry within it which can fire up some of the muscles and assist people to move around quite differently. So those kind of things are coming through and are quite different, and those kind of things are not all being developed within the clinical sphere that traditional health services have been developed in the past. A lot of them are coming from the tech sector, and then you know, pulling in partnerships with the more clinical kind of sector. We're seeing other things which, as devices have sort of become part of our lives, or we spend more and more time in cars. Maybe if you're in Auckland, not in Tauranga or in Waikato. I know Tauranga's got interesting traffic patterns, but we'll leave that alone. We've now got sensors that are starting to pick up as we go around our day-to-day kind of activities and start to detect declines in people's kind of health and early kind of indications that things are starting to happen. So once again, being able to step in and intervene earlier. There's some really interesting stuff coming through in the scanning world. So it's almost the Star Trek kind of space that we're starting to move into. And so we're going to see a real shrinkage of the kind of footprint that's required to maintain and manage a lot of the technology that we currently use. And there's going to be a lot of closer to home, even in the home kind of technology available in the next decade or so, that's going to really fundamentally change, first the scanning process, the gathering of the data, but probably even more importantly, the second part, which is AI is going to be undertaking and processing a lot of that information in a very different way than we have done to date, where clinicians are reading a lot of those kind of results. We're also seeing a lot of stuff happening with precision medicine, so genomics. You know, we sit there with LIC and the like over in the Waikato, a whole national dairy herd essentially managed through genomics and genetics. The issue we've got with human genetics is we don't have one community-based lab in New Zealand that can process or is registered to process human genetic material. So that means that currently the New Zealand health sector is sitting quite a way behind. We've got hospital labs that can process single genes around diagnosis, but we haven't got the ability to use multi-panel gene measures at the moment, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The technology's changing now. You can actually put a sequencer on the bottom of an iPhone, and the other thing that's starting to happen is, and they've got these running in the States and they're seeking some FDA approval, is fridges with 3D printers within them, who are using biometric measures to measure the response to people's medications, and then custom printing medication for patients in their home using 3D printers in their fridges. So there's a mass disruption, if any of you are community pharmacists, in terms of what's the role going to look like moving forward in terms of how pharmacy plays the game. We've got bathtubs that could actually perhaps provide more than just the soaking, relaxing kind of feel and play that monitoring kind of role. And then we've got really interesting stuff that's starting to happen using approaches which are a little novel. So this one is one that some of you may have read about that's been pushed around in the media. Taking sperm, attaching a little clamp to that, and then attaching drugs and using magnets to target the delivery of medications in with cervical cancer. How that works, I'm not sure. Whether you go down to the store and choose the sperm, high-performing ones, slower ones, and choose how and what you want to attach to it. But if you just think about the technology, it's about how do we more effectively use a bio insertion rather than some of the more traditional approaches that we've used in the past with medicine. And then I guess we've got our hospitals, which currently are grinding their way through massive chunks of our taxes. So at the moment we've got our 20 district health boards, 19 of them are in the red. Where I come from, Waikato's running a $90 million deficit. Almost, imagine what we could do with that in terms of investing it in angel opportunities. Grinding through very, very traditional ways and really driven by a lot of inefficiency. So we need to see a real shift away from that traditional way of running hospitals. Now, some of that will be come about through the delivery of, or the reduction in the delays that people have experienced in the past around some of the interventions that are required through using the new technologies like 3D printing on demand that will come through. So I guess I'm just trying to paint a different picture of what health opportunities might look like from an investment perspective. Stop thinking about hospitals, stop thinking about traditional kind of provider networks, and start thinking about a mixture of virtual technology and clinical kind of services. And that kind of mixture of things, I think, starts to put us all in a different part, or give us a different experience in terms of being more in control of our experience within the health system. So one of the things that we've introduced into New Zealand, we've been the first to introduce a pharmacogenomic panel. So as I said before, there's no labs in New Zealand that can process this information. But this is about how we all individually respond to medications. So some of us are ultra rapid metabolizers and some of us are quite slow. And coffee's often the best way to understand that. Some of us can drink litres of it and nothing happens. Others can sniff it and not sleep for a week. And that's basically the response that we're looking at around medications. So we can now, with a cheek swab, pull out a panel of around 9 genes, and from that we can forecast how you're going to respond to about 65% of the most commonly prescribed medications. And that's really important for New Zealand as well, because we've also got a different genome than other parts of the world. We've got a different blend and a different kind of mix, which means that some of the most commonly prescribed medications for some of the most common long-term conditions are actually ineffective for large portions of our population. And so we need to think quite differently around how we use those medications. So that's one of the kind of things that's, while I mention it, it's here now and the technology is kind of available.
How do we do what we do? Separated by oceans and mountain ranges, we can talk to each other as if across a kitchen table. We can climb higher, dive deeper, go faster and further than ever before. On a clear day, we can see the universe. We can hold 1,000 years of history in the palm of our hand. And all the beautiful things we create and the incredible adventures we have, we can share without limit. Once, such things were at the edge of our wildest visions. Now we experience them every day. And as we develop newer and smarter technologies, the impossible becomes ever more possible, until eventually it becomes simple. Today, we are driving the same evolution in our healthcare. We are building beautifully complex technologies to bring you to that point where advanced innovation achieves simplicity. This is Indice Health Agent, a voice-activated AI that empowers you to manage your health, from booking appointments to requesting repeat prescriptions, from recording vitals to checking your allergies and medications. Indice Health Agent helps make the complex simple, and all you have to do is say the words.
Hello and welcome. I am your Indice Health Agent. How can I help?
So the last thing I'll just point to is actually over in Hamilton in November, there's the National HINS Week, which is the Health Information Network, but it's bringing together all the national and international providers. Ourselves, we've got a partnership with AWS, and so we're standing up a whole experiential village. So a lot of the stuff that I've just been talking about, you can come and touch and feel and interact with a whole lot of international providers that are bringing their kit. A lot of them, on the back of being startups that have had support from similar groups to ourselves offshore who are now pushing this stuff internationally. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.